Hey everybody, I'm going to make a quick asparagus soup because I have old asparagus that was getting a little soft and soggy in my refrigerator. Instead of tossing it when it starts to get old, find a way to repurpose it. So what I did was just chop off the top soft portions, the pieces that look almost like the cruciferous vegetable part, the very tip of the asparagus. You don't need them for asparagus soup. You can use them as a garnish. If they're really mushy and soft, which was the case with my asparagus, I either compost or those go in the garbage. They don't taste good, yucky, smelly, but I can use the rest of the asparagus, and I'm just gonna use the rest of the stock with some onion. This is olive oil and just a little bit of butter, garlic, fresh lemon juice, salt, pepper. We'll add a little Parmesan at the end and some homemade, this is chicken bone broth. If you have a chicken stock that you purchase or you make yourself, you could also use a vegetable stock. I like the flavor that a chicken stock gives to soup. So you need a broth, onions, your asparagus, a little oil and or butter, some garlic, lemon juice, a little Parmesan, salt and pepper, and we're gonna saute the onion and the garlic in here until they're really soft. Add our asparagus, add the broth, bring the mixture to a boil, and then use a hand immersion blender to puree it into a soup. So something easy and quick, a great way to repurpose a vegetable that's getting a little old and funky in your fridge. So instead of tossing all of this, I'm going to use the remainder to make a soup. I find that when I try and prepare the vegetable like I normally would, grilling, roasting, sauteing, when it's a little funky, the taste is not so great. So a soup is a great way to sort of camouflage that getting old flavor, and you won't notice the texture because we're going to blend it into a puree. So something really easy and simple. This is not a cream-based soup, so it's lighter, lower in calorie, healthy in phytonutrients, a little bone broth, which is good for the joints and the skin and the gut. Here we go. If you're looking for a way to make an easy bone broth, check out the recipe for the whole roasted lemon and garlic chicken. I show you in that video how to take the rest of the bones and the chicken carcass to add to water with a little bit of apple cider vinegar in a crock pot to make a bone broth. So simple in sourcing. So I'm heating the oil. I melted the little pad of butter that I had in here. I'm gonna add my chopped onions. Don't worry about the size of the onions because we're pureeing this, it doesn't matter. So we really just wanna cook them evenly. So for the purpose of even cooking, make sure they're semi-uniform. Get all my onions there. And I'm gonna add the garlic. Again, I didn't fully mince or chop this. I just want it in pieces to be easier to puree, but the hand immersion blender will do that for you. So don't waste the time over chopping. Love it. I'm gonna let these cook until they get mostly translucent. You want to avoid browning or crisping or burning, obviously the garlic and the onion, but try and avoid searing and browning here. You just want them to get really soft and translucent without the brown caramelization. So keep the temperature of your pan medium low. My onions look great. This is about 10 minutes of sauteing, and I was stirring them periodically just to make sure none were sticking and getting too brown. So they're very fragrant and soft. I'm gonna go ahead and add my asparagus. And I'll give you all of the quantities in the recipe. That's about 2 pounds of chopped asparagus. I'm gonna add my bone broth. I need a little bit more. The salt and the pepper, and then we're gonna bring this to a boil and then turn it down and let it just simmer over low heat for about 30 minutes until the vegetables are really tender, at which point we can add the lemon juice and puree. So there's my salt. Gonna add the pepper, Give those a stir and then bring them to a boil. And we're boiling, so now I'm gonna turn it down to low just so that it simmers for about 30 minutes. So bring the rapid boil down, turn the heat to low or even medium low, just so that it's not a high boil, and let that sit for a little while. So this has been going for 30 minutes. The asparagus should be really soft and tender. If you need to add more broth, you can do that, but start to blend first before you add too much liquid. So I'm going to use this is an immersion blender. It's a handheld blender. I'm going to take the spoon out and just puree it. You could alternatively use a Vitamix or a high-speed blender. Just be very careful with how hot the liquid is. That can get a little messy. So I'm going to go ahead and start to puree. And I'm just going to do that until it's nice and smooth. And that's about it. So if there are any really fibrous pieces, chunks left in that, you can scoop them out if they're not pureeing very easily. But you just want it to be smooth, creamy. Asparagus is pretty fibrous and stringy, especially near the base of the stalk, if you don't chop enough of that really hard fibrous piece off. So it's not going to be quite as soft as smooth as something like potato or pea. However, it should blend pretty nicely here. So I'm going to turn the heat back up to bring this to a simmer once again, and we'll add the lemon juice and a little bit of Parmesan. I just added my lemon juice, a couple tablespoons, and now I'm going to add Parmesan cheese and let that melt and blend in, and then that's it. So you can garnish this if you had some remaining asparagus tips that you cut off of the asparagus before making the soup. You can blanch those or quickly steam them and use them as a garnish on top of the soup. Because mine were a little funky, those are gone. So I'm going to use just a sprinkle of fresh parsley as a garnish. And you can add more salt, pepper if it needs it, but that's it. So I'm just serving with a little drizzle of olive oil, a garnish of parsley, a sprinkle of Parmesan. Pretty simple, tasty.